The flight attendant's hand brushed his shoulder as if checking his seatbelt, and her mouth came close enough to his ear that Owen could smell the airline's hand sanitizer on her skin. "Pretend you're feeling sick," she said. "Leave the plane." She straightened up before he could respond, already moving down the aisle with a clipboard and a customer service smile bolted back into place, checking another row's belts like nothing had happened. Owen sat there a second too long, certain he'd misheard, and went back to his phone, boarding music, the shuffle of bags into overhead bins. A toddler 2 rows back negotiating, proudly, against the concept of seat belts. He'd asked for the window seat specifically, 14C, over the wing, the one he always chose on the rare trips he allowed himself, a habit left over from childhood flights with his father, who used to point out cloud formations like they were a private joke between them. His father's watch was on his wrist now, an old analog Seiko with a scratched crystal, kept running more out of obligation than sentiment. He glanced at it without meaning anything by it. 9:47. 12 minutes to pushback. The flight attendant came back at 9:51, and this time there was no pretense in her face at all. She crouched by his armrest, voice low enough that the businessman in 14B didn't look up from his laptop. "Please." Her jaw was tight in a way it hadn't been with the toddler's parents, in a way professional smiles don't allow for. "I'm begging you." Owen's mouth went dry before his mind caught up with why. His pulse in his collar, a strange prickling awareness of his own body that he hadn't asked for. He thought about pressing the call button, asking a supervisor, demanding an explanation. Instead, his hand found the seatbelt buckle. "Okay," he heard himself say. The performance was clumsy, a hand pressed over his mouth, a muttered word about nausea, a stagger toward the forward galley that probably convinced no one of actual illness and convinced everyone of something close enough. A gate agent met him at the jet bridge door with the particular patience reserved for nervous flyers, walked him back into the terminal, processed a refund voucher with 3 keystrokes and a sympathetic look that didn't ask any of the questions Owen wanted answered. He stood at the window after that, watching his own flight push back from the gate, taxi out past 2 others, lift off into a flat gray sky without him. Relief and humiliation arrived together, tangled, indistinguishable, the specific useless feeling of having just upended his own travel plans on the unexplained word of a stranger. He sat at an airport bar that didn't open until 11 and drank a coffee that had gone lukewarm by the second sip, replaying her face, the tightness in her jaw, the word begging, which people didn't use lightly, which professionals especially didn't use to passengers they'd never met. He never got her name. He'd thought afterward that he should have asked, should have at least caught the little embroidered tag above her breast pocket, but in the moment there had been no room in him for details. Just the dry mouth, the watch ticking against his wrist, the decision arriving before the reasoning did. 3 days later, an alert on his phone, the kind he almost swiped away without reading. The regional carrier had grounded an aircraft after a mechanical fault was discovered during a routine check between legs. Control surface, irregularity, caught before the next flight, no injuries, minor delay for affected passengers. 3 paragraphs buried below the fold of a local news site. The tail number meant nothing to him until he checked his old boarding pass, still crumpled in his jacket pocket, and matched the digits with hands that weren't quite steady. He sat with that for a long time. Not triumph. There was nothing to celebrate, no villain unmasked, no confrontation to replay with satisfaction. Just the quiet, dizzying fact that a stranger had looked at a cabin full of people and chosen, for reasons he would likely never know, to save exactly one of them, and that he happened to be the one within reach. He searched, in the weeks that followed, for some way to find her. An airline complaint line, a vague description, a flight number that led nowhere useful. Nobody could or would tell him anything. Eventually he stopped looking, not because the gratitude faded, but because it became something he carried instead of something he needed answered. 6 weeks later, in a different airport, boarding a different flight, Owen noticed the flight attendant checking rows with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Too bright, too fixed, the kind of strain he might once have walked past without a second glance. He looked back this time, held her gaze half a second longer than necessary, the way you might leave a door open rather than close it. Didn't say anything, neither did he. But something in him had changed since 14C. Some old reflex toward looking away from other people's trouble had quietly worn through, and he sat back in his seat, a window seat, out of habit, and let his father's watch tick against his wrist, no longer just an inheritance, but a kind of accounting, time he hadn't lost, time someone else had handed back to him without explanation, and which he now understood he owed forward, somehow to someone he hadn't met yet.